I'm back. The computer keeps telling me here, your video may be lagging. Hopefully the video is not lagging. I don't know what it means. The video might be lagging. Are you talking about laggards here? Anyhow, I'm back. Yes, I want to talk today about the pledge registry. I don't think people understand the significance of the registration of live birth as being the foundation security, and so that's what I want to clarify or talk about here today. Years ago, I don't know, almost probably 25 years ago, just about, I came across this document blurbage on what's called the Pledge Registry, and it was referring to some countries on the planet at that time that did not have a birth registration system. And because they didn't have a birth registration system, they weren't in a position to know who anybody was. They didn't have any legal names, they didn't have any registration. So Bill and Bobby Mary Smith could be, you go to a bank to do business or do business wherever, but there's no way to track them because they weren't bound to use like a legal name like people are today. You know, your birth certificate, your driver's license, you want to open a bank account, you have to use the birth certificate name or their driver's license name or something that's tied to that foundation security in the birth registration. Without that, they have no legal certainty. Keywords here, legal certainty. So because these countries at that time did not have this pledge registry, this registration birth system set up, the banks were not going to do business with these countries because the banks had no way to collect. They didn't know who they were lending. There was no legal certainty. They didn't know, were they dealing with John Smith, who could be Steve Smith tomorrow or whatever. You know, there was no fixed names that people were using, and so the transactions were not trackable, basically. There was no legal certainty. So when you look at that and you consider all of that, then the fact of the matter is, if the governments did not have that registration of live birth, they would have nothing. Nothing. And you need to understand this because in ignorance, or people are lying, or they just don't know. I'm talking about government people, so-called officials, experts, former somethings. I'll tell you that's not a security. Well, if it wasn't a security, then the countries, let me put it this way, it is a security, and the countries need that. Otherwise, they would have nothing. They would have no control. They wouldn't have anything. They'd have no money. They'd have no means to tax. Who's the taxpayer? No legal certainty, right? So point being is that, and we covered this early on in the Reclaiming Securities Information Package. I got a whole blurb on this legal certainty thing, although we used a different phraseology, but the governments would have no legal certainty in anything. They would have no money. They would have nothing. They'd have no way to tax, to build. Because, you know, like I say, today, everybody's using like a John Paul Smith off of a birth certificate name. But without that, who are you? How do they track you? There's nothing there to track with. No legal certainty. So as of now, as at that time, some countries did have the pledge registry, like the United States, Canada. Any place that was registering birth has the pledge registry, has that legal certainty. For, you know, if John Paul Smith doesn't pay the bill, they know where the property is because it's all recorded. It's all registered at the bank, at the land titles, at the Ministry of Transportation, or wherever, whatever, organization, institution, government, or otherwise. So some countries had that, and so they could carry on, and they had the legal certainty. And but without that legal certainty, they have nothing. So these registration of live births are, without doubt, a foundation security. That is the ultimate security, period. It doesn't matter what anybody says, and this I'm kind of sharing this so you understand the mechanics behind it. So if you're up against someone that says that registration live birth is not a security, you have a chance to explain to them or tell them, oh yes, it is, pal. If this is not if you didn't have this registration of live birth, the government would not have a birth certificate. It could not mandate anyone to do anything. There would be no social insurance number, no driver's license. What are you going to apply with? Go in and apply for driver's license with all this without the birth certificate or birth registration. Just give them a name and they're going to accept it. Then next week you can change your name. See, no legal certainty. I mean, change your name on the fly without going into a court to have a legal name change. We're not talking about that here at all. We're talking about pledge registry, foundation security, registration of live birth for foundation security, and pledge registry. Listen to those words, pledge registry. Without that foundation security, the pledging that Colonel House talked about would not exist. The pledging that's talked about in the Uniform Securitization Scheme that you'll find at our blog, www.restorethekingdomofgod.blogspot.com. The third button down there, you click here button says Uniform Securitization Scheme. You read that, there's pledging going on, all right, of your labor. So without that foundation security and mandating everyone use these registered legal names, there would be no legal certainty, there'd be no pledge. The government would not be in business. Not the way it is today. And keep in mind, previous to the registration of births, the governments were funded by their own gold. But of course, that they had to pay the interest to the bankers and from the Federal Reserve. So they ran out of the gold and the treasuries are empty. So what do? Well, they had to capture the labor of the people, the property and the labor of the people. That's what's underwriting the whole system. You, me, our labor, our estates. So it's important that people understand the significance of that registration of live birth document. And it doesn't matter what anybody out there says. Like I say, they could be lying to you if they're not. They could be ignorant. They may not know. But so you need to understand why it is a foundation security, so you can enforce it that it is a foundation security and put it on the table. Oh, yeah, this is a foundation security, all right. My mom and dad gave me that name. If you guys didn't have this document, you'd have no legal certainty in anything you're doing here. You couldn't possibly be knocking on the guy's door to try to collect the debt because you wouldn't know who he is. As I said, the banks wouldn't do business with these countries because there's no legal certainty, no way to track who the borrower was. So they're not going to lend to somebody they can't track. And now you go into a bank here today with a birth certificate, you give them all the information, legal name, okay, they got registered, address, all these things for triangulation. So they know where you're at. They know where the property's at. They know which doors to come knocking on. And whether you pay or not, they'll take the property because they've got this legal certainty. And it's all based on this foundation security. Again, go back and watch our very first video here on YouTube, Introduction to Trusts, Estates, and Securities. I lay it from the ground up in that video. It's almost 4 years now, 3.5 years ago we did that one. This is why we say they took your ownership of property, evidenced by that registration of birth document, the original foundation security. And that ownership is held in trust, and that's why you have an interest. So no, we don't own any property in the country. But we all have an interest. We're not users here. We're not mere users. No, we all have an interest because they took our ownership of property. They needed to do that for legal certainty. To fund government. Quite frankly, and again, without those registration of live births, the government would have to go out there and find some other way to get its money. Simple as that. Think about it. Think about it. You know, for example, if they didn't register like they do today, the automobile to Steve Smith, then how are they going to take control of the vehicles? How are they going to enforce anything? They could sell it. It could be, it's not registered. So it could be John driving it. It could be Mary driving it. It could be Susie driving it. It could be Santa Claus flying it. Who knows? Without those registrations, they got no legal certainty in anything. The government would not be in business the way it is today. Your labor would not be underwriting government through taxation. And the more the government borrows, the higher the interest cost on those debts, government debts that the government's incurring, the higher the tax rate. And you people all get to underwrite all of that. How do you feel about that? What's to stop these guys could go to taxing 100%? When are the people going to wake up and say enough is enough? You know, I'm not here to bash government. That's not what this is about. This is understanding the system, understanding the pledge registry, understanding that the requirement for legal certainty or the government is out of business or not in business the way they are today. They'd have to go and dig their own gold, I guess. I don't know. They'd have no way to pay government would have no way to borrow money because it would not have any taxpayers on the hook to take some money from you to pay the interest to the bondholders. It wouldn't exist. Would not exist. So it's important to understand that this foundation security registration of live birth is a security. It is the foundation security. It's the ultimate security. And anyone having dealings with the trustee is not to look to this, is to look to the estate for the ultimate security. It's like when they go into bankruptcy, they're all dealing with the trustee, right? So they're all dealing with the trustee, but he doesn't pay the bills. And bankruptcy trustee told me in 2005 when I thought this was the path to take. He looks at me in the face, he says, it's not you going bankrupt, it's the estate. Represented by the foundation security. Without that, what estate are we talking about? There's no legal certainty. There'd be no bankruptcy. And we would have all the fruits of our labor. People wouldn't be going down the tubes like they are today. The government's basically bankrupting people and they don't see it. They just want to keep, okay, well, we'll just pay the taxes. It sounds like a good reason, but those taxes has nothing to do with infrastructure. Standing Committee on Banking and Commerce, 1938, laid it out. Taxes pays the interest to the bondholders, period. That's the ones that buy the government bonds, financiers. That's what your taxes is aiding and abetting in that. So I hope this video here helps you a little bit to understand the significance of that registration, that foundation security, that registration of live birth. And just think about it. Get the picture in your head, whatever it takes to think about it and understand that that is a security. And it doesn't matter what anybody says, but I'm giving you some ammunition here, hopefully, that you can work it out with whoever you need to work it out with, whenever you need to work it out with, that yes, this is a security. It's the ultimate security. Ultimate is ultimate, right? It's best you get. It's all backed by our gilt-edged credit, also discussed in the Standing Committee on Banking and Commerce, 1938. This is when they were interviewing the first governor of the Bank of Canada, Graham Towers, in Parliament. These are the Hansards. This is the discussions they had about this stuff. So it's imperative to understand this kind of thing and to move forward, or at least, to move forward, to get through things. And because some people just, they talk to a judge or whatever, and the judge says, oh, that's BS. And so they accept it. What do you mean you accept it? What kind of standing is that? You got to stand up for yourselves here. It's important to understand the pledge registry. They need the registry these births and issue the birth certificates to have the legal certainty, or they don't have it, and government is out of business or wouldn't be in business the way it is today. Without the registration, they couldn't, when they ran out of the gold to pay their bills with and had to get the pledge the labor of the people, if they didn't register the births, there'd be no pledge of the labor of the people. Wouldn't exist. Okay, and read the uniform securitization scheme. It's at our blog, www.restorethekingdomofgod.blogspot.com. There's 3 big buttons in the middle of the screen. Click here, and click here. The third one down is on the uniform securitization scheme, and you read about the pledge in there as well. Middle button is information about our information package if you're interested in pursuing this, reclaiming your securities, which is what we're talking about, starting with the foundation security, the most important one of all, which is the legal certainty. And there's people out there saying, well, we're just mere users. No, they took your ownership of property. They're the users, the government's, not us. Come on. We all have an interest here. And I think that's it. I'm just going to pause this for a moment here and gather my thoughts, make sure I said what I came to say here, and let's just go. Now, with respect to this interest we all have, keeping in mind here that they're holding your foundation security, it's in trust. Your state's in trust there. The ultimate security is in trust. But as it is now, you're all claiming that interest. You're all holding that interest. And as long as you hold that interest, the trustee cannot get to work for you. If you go back to that 55-minute audio and they're renewing the mind video here on our YouTube channel, we talk about that. Exactly that. But releasing the interest over to the trustee / custodian / securities intermediary so he can get to work for you. So they're holding our ownership, but you're holding the interest, the claim to the interest. This is what we need to release or transfer to them. It's actually called transferring title. That's another conversation. It's in our information package. So anyhow, I think that's it for today. I like to keep it short as possible. Don't bore you on stuff, and but I would highly recommend that you ponder on what I just said here and think about it. Think about it. Think about it. No foundation security, no registration of live birth. Government has no legal certainty. Banks, finances, there's no legal certainty at all out there whatsoever in anything. People would be on their own. You do what you do. What you got is all yours, and the government can't come along and take it because who the heck are you? They don't have the legal mechanism. They don't have the legal certainty. They'd have nothing. But you wouldn't be able to borrow money at the bank either because who are they going to lend it to? They don't know who you are. They don't know where the property is. I mean, you could walk into without the legal certainty. It's like this. You walk into the bank and say, well, my name is Steve. I'm here to borrow, $500. So the bank lends you $500 and you walk away. Where's the property at? And next day you could have a different name. Whereas today with the birth certificate, that name is fixed. Or if you want to change that name, you got to go through the court process to change that name. And they'll send notice of that to all the parties out there. So there's no escaping that legal certainty that be the case. So it's important that people understand this. And like I say, think about it. Just think about it. The significance of that foundation security, the significance of that registration of live birth document, very important to the entire equation. Without that, no birth certificate, no driver's license, no SSN, no SIN, no ATO number, no tax number, no nothing, no licensing, nothing, zero. No way for the government to extract your labor in the form of money. Love you. God bless. Enjoy. Later, God never fails. Keep smiling, people. Love you. Till next time, and it will be next time. We'll be back not that long.